Welcome to the 180 Life Coach Podcast, home of the Becoming Movement, a place for awareness, truth, healing, rebuilding, and becoming. A journey of understanding who you were, who you are, and if you're ready, becoming who you were always meant to be. Because it isn't over. You're still becoming. And now, here's your host, Ingra Michelle Williams.
Have you ever known that something was unhealthy, but you continue to do it anyway? Have you ever left a relationship only to find yourself with the same person, but someone different? Have you ever promised yourself, this is the last time I'm going to do this, only to find yourself right back where you started? Why? Because awareness isn't the finish line. It's the beginning. But truth is what changes you. So today, I want to talk about awareness and truth. So last week, when we started talking about awareness, I told you that awareness was the first step to becoming. Becoming what? Becoming who you were always meant to be. So we're building at this point, and I want you to stay with me. But today I want to challenge you because awareness alone is not enough. You can be completely aware that something is hurting you, and you still keep going back to it. So what are we missing when we make those conscious decisions, even though we're aware? The bridge is truth. And so today I want to continue the conversation, and I want to tell you a story. And I think that it's going to really help you to start to look internally because I told you I struggled with my own life for at least 30 plus years, trying to figure Ingra out, trying to figure why I was doing what I was doing, knowing that something was missing, knowing that there was some variable that was happening in my life that stopped me from appreciating where I was, that was stopping me from just moving forward. You know how you just feel like you know something is off, but you can't put your finger on it, right? And so when we talk about awareness and truth, awareness being the first pillar to becoming, truth being the second, but I want this to be the bridge that ties the two. What are you saying, Ingra? I'm glad you asked that question. So I stopped smoking many times, not once, but at least on 5 different occasions. Every single time, I knew that smoking was bad for me. I knew that it smelled, and I hated the smell. I hated the smell on my clothes. I hated if and this has happened to me on more than one occasion where someone who knew me, who was totally unaware that I smoked because I had selective times and spaces and places where I did it. But the worst thing for me would be to walk into a place or walk around somebody and you know how people start sniffing and they'd be like, "Is that you?" And I would be so embarrassed. And they'd be like, "Ingra, I didn't know you smoke. You didn't look like you smoked." And I always kept thinking, like, what does a smoker look like? Right. But of course, we all have, if we just had to envision, we would all have an opinion on what we think a smoker looked like. But I hated it. I hate the smell. And it was so embarrassing every time I got called out. I knew that it was expensive because cigarettes, they weren't going down. The prices were just going up. And I also knew that it was affecting my health. I knew that it was controlling me because I would sit and I would look at that cigarette pack. Oh my gosh, I'm getting low on cigarettes. I need to go to the store. And nobody can understand this unless you're a smoker. You never want to get caught and run out of your cigarettes. Okay. Can be other addictions, but Let's just stick with the cigarettes. So, why did I keep returning to this disgusting, unhealthy habit? Because I kept lying to myself. I kept saying, Smoke, it helps me, smoking, because it helps me to deal with my stress. It helps me to feel calm. It's a break that I need in my day." And it all sounded reasonable. And it even sounded true, but it wasn't. It was a lie. One day, I became willing to ask myself a different question. What is this smoking really doing for me? What is it really doing? And that answer changed my life because it wasn't managing my stress. I was medicating my loneliness. I was numbing my pain. I was trying to fill places inside of me that cigarettes could never heal because cigarettes wasn't the problem. It was my prescription that I thought was going to fix the problem. And once I recognized the truth behind the addiction, behind the behavior, I couldn't unsee it. It's not that I don't walk through my day because, and again, I don't like to necessarily get into psychology, but it's not that I don't walk through my day, particularly when I'm having a super stressful day and I have a lot of things going on, or a stressor, a bill, or something can pop into my mind. And immediately I might have this millisecond of a thought that says, I need a cigarette. And I promise you, I'll look and be like, what the hell? I don't know where that thought came from. And I continue to go through my day. I continue to march forward. I continue to make different choices because I know I will not go back to that habit because I have now identified that what I always believed was a lie. It was bondage. It was something that I had not thoroughly vetted in my mind to say, why am I really doing this? See, awareness will identify our behavior. And so we have to be very careful as we start to become aware because chances are, if we're honest with ourselves, and we're talking about awareness plus truth, if we're honest with ourselves, we have an inkling. And a lot of times we don't want to put words to it. And so we'll continue the lie. But when we're doing something that we know, you know what, let me stop and really ask a question. Because remember I said about the kids, and if you're new, I talked about how kids stirred something uncomfortable around me. I loved kids, but when they came into a certain perimeter, it was automatic walls up. And I didn't understand, but once I started becoming things that I was doing in my life, behaviors started becoming more evident. I could see them clearly. What I had discarded before as just being, this is the way I am, this is how I show up, this is what I do. I started asking questions. And so awareness will identify behaviors that we need to address. And so when we start to say, why do I keep doing this? Why? Or why do I keep attracting this? It could be chaos. Everywhere I go, it seems to be chaos. Everybody around me seems to just be an author of just confusion in my life. And we're thinking that this is a situation, but why do we keep attracting these things? Why do I keep reacting this way? Me talking about the kids. Why is it that these children up the street are perfectly fine, but once they're in my orbit and within 3 feet, all of a sudden I feel the tension in my body? See, awareness identifies behavior. Awareness shines a light on things that we might want to ignore. But once we have awareness and that light is on an issue, it doesn't always tell us why. And so we can totally be aware of a feeling. And like myself, the reason I continue to go back to smoking because I kept telling myself it helps me with stress, never stopping to say, why do I keep picking up this behavior? Why do I continue to return to these cigarettes? What is going on in my life? And I will be honest, it was a trigger with the behavior, but it was never addressing the root cause. And so that is where we start to bridge awareness, is when we connect it, because truth exposes the root. Awareness identifies the behavior. If you have a pen, I want you to write it down and stick a pen in it. Awareness identifies behaviors, but truth exposes the root. Truth exposes the problem. And when we talked about in episode 5, I said undesirable experiences create weeds. Now, all experiences are not negative because some experiences, I said, create plants. Plants still have roots because they originated from something. But I also made the analogy and said, let's talk about the plant versus the weed because plants are good. I love plants, but I hate a weed. Okay. But they both have roots, they both have stems, and a lot of times they both have leaves. And so I made the comparison in myself about being accused, having people lie on me, right? And I talked to you about this in our Let's Talk About It because I said, I hate with a passion when I feel like somebody, if you want to start a fight, if you want to pick or get me, now you can't do it anymore. It might bother me a little bit, let's just be honest. But you cannot get me to react the same way because I've learned that why I was reacting to people lying on me was because I had been lied on since I was a kid. When I was not able to protect myself, not able to stop people around me from saying or do certain things, people were lying and saying things that I could not protect myself from. And so as I grew, now as a young woman, as a teenager, as an adult, when someone would say something that I knew was not true, it would cause a reaction in me. And I always say those can be fighting words, right? Because we said awareness identifies behavior. I realize, gosh, why do I get so upset when people just say stuff that pisses me off? That's what I would tell myself. That people just want to lie on you, that they want to say things that are not true. And so I would fight. And it's funny because one of my ex-husbands loved to trigger me, and that was one of the ways that he would trigger me, and I didn't even realize it was happening, and my kids, unfortunately had to bear and experience and witness the foolishness of 2 broken people trying to make a relationship work. And so I remember my kids kind of coming into me and they're saying, I remember when I used to hear so and so, he would be in there trying to provoke mommy and he would be saying, ying, ying, he would be saying stuff. And then he would say one thing and mama would just get so upset and just go off. And it was crazy because when I heard them talking about this, I knew exactly how he would trigger me. He would say stuff like, "You don't care anything about me. You never cared anything about me. You were planning on leaving me a long time ago because you're a dishonest person. You're a selfish person." And I would think about all the hell that I was trying to do to save my marriage. And now you're telling me that I'm this type of person. And he could say something and say something and say something, and I would ignore him because I'm like, he's just trying to pick a fight. But once he identified, if I say this, it's gonna get a rise out of her. And there are some people who live off of chaos. They love to create chaos. Why? Probably got some weeds they need to pick, okay? Because it's not normal behavior. And we said awareness identifies the behavior. I was not aware at that time because I was not in the maturity level. I did not have the knowledge that I have talking to you now. Because had I had it, one, I would have not been in that relationship. And two, I would not have reacted in that relationship. And so once I knew and identified that, you know what, this is a trigger, I can start to ask myself, what in this is really the truth? And truth will expose the root. Truth will say, what am I believing? It asks harder questions because we said awareness says, why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep attracting this? Why am I reacting this way? Those are questions that awareness will say. Okay. But whenever we're getting to truth, you got to realize you got to ask the deeper questions. And remember, I said a good therapist who's worth their weight, worth their money, worth that session, worth the time, they will know how to ask the question in the right way to get the right response. Because sometimes we're unwilling to ask those harder questions. Example, what am I believing? What untruths am I believing right now? What am I afraid of? What need am I trying to meet? What pain? What pain am I trying to avoid? Because see, truth isn't always comfortable. And if you look at your becoming manual, when I made this manual, it came out of my heart. And so when you look at the pictures, because I was creating it, but I was also becoming, guys. I had to get honest with myself. And so the hours, the many nights that I stayed up and I was making this manual, it started as something for myself. But as I started learning, I was like, I got to share this. How can I share this? I said I was going to give the people tools, tips, tricks, insights, materials. And it was like, it grew and it grew and it grew into the becoming manual. And so when you're looking through the pages, promise you're seeing me walk through my own life. And so when you see in the pages that start to go from the awakening into truth, you'll see the same young lady who I created in my own likeness and image. You will see her crying. You'll see her picking up puzzle pieces off the floor. Every one of those puzzle pieces was a pain that I was trying to avoid because truth, like I said, it's not comfortable a lot of times. And sometimes truth will even hurt your feelings. Sometimes getting honest and just telling the truth, it will destroy the lie that we've been telling ourselves. And even in the moments where I say, I had to have somebody that I could bounce my truth off of as I was going through it. And so when I wrote those pages, I said, when you start getting into truth, you may want to find a therapist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not one that plays one on TV. I'm a person who has walked through and who has lived my own pain and who am now walking in this freedom that I wish I could give to everyone. But I had to go through the process. And so I said, when your truth starts to come out, sometimes it can be uncomfortable. And it's okay if you feel like, you know what, I need to go find a therapist that I can work through because truth sometimes can be disturbing. It could bring up some things that maybe you don't want to think about, maybe some things that we suppress. But what I will tell you is truth will set you free because we can be aware of something and stay stuck. and continue to repeat the same pattern over and over and over again because we have not asked the right questions, the tough questions that will start to reveal the truth of our situations. Because you have to understand lies will keep you bound. People will stay in the story because it's easier. And we started to talk about this because I wanted to kind of loosen some of the shackles, right? Because it will keep us bound. It will keep us blinded. And when I started this, I want to say in episode number 2, why some people never change. All of these things, I'm hoping that you'll see it's almost like a circle that you can stay in that circle, and that's where the pattern is. So when I say when you start to see the patterns in your life, you'll see the things that you repeat over and over and over again. And that's why you continue to bring the same things in your life. That's why you continue to stay triggered by the same emotions. Because trust me, I have stayed, if anybody, I used to say, I do not want to be like the people going around the mountain when God tried to deliver them out of Egypt and they just had to keep going around the mountain. I would always make that analogy. Like I would say, what am I supposed to learn in this moment? Because I want to be free from this situation. But the thing was, I was asking the same question over and over and over again. I was aware, but I wasn't going deeper. And that's what truth is. It exposes the root cause. And so when you're realizing that you have an awareness of something, this is where the challenge comes in. Is really allowing yourself, giving yourself permission to be honest with you. And whether it's in a therapy session, and in my case, I needed a friend. I needed someone that I could talk to, that I trusted. And the more I talked to them, and because I felt I had a safe person that I could talk to, it allowed me to talk through things in real time. Now, it would be great if I said I was talking about my husband, but I wasn't. And I think a lot of people may understand that because sometimes the people that are closest to us, we try talking to them, but they don't hear us necessarily. And when I was going through my process, I don't think I would have come to the realizations that I have now had my husband maybe been there as much as I wanted him to be. I'm grateful and I'll tell him, "Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that you were not there because I had to fall on my face." It was the falling that helped me to look up and see for the first time. Because sometimes when we're walking through things, we don't see it. We're walking in the lie. And I said, the lie is what keeps us bound in the pattern that we've been going in. Because we'll say, and I said it many a times, you know what? That's just the way I am. But let me just tell you, some of the things that were holding me captive in my own life, because I said lies keep us bound. I would tell myself, I'm just that kind of person. I don't hang around a lot of people. I don't go out with a lot of people. I keep a small group of friends. And it was just multiple things, I'm a homebody. I just like to stay this way, and these were things I really believed about my character. I'm just this way. This is just what I do. This is who I am. And with the cigarettes, this helps me cope. I need to do this. No, see, nobody understands me. These are lies that we tell ourselves. I do this thing because it helps me cope. What is the thing? There's so many different addictions, there's so many habits. Some people eat, some people smoke, some people drink, some people watch pornography, some people promiscuous. Like there's so many different things that we all do in our own lives because we feel like it's helping us in some way, right? I can't try to change because I'm too damaged. Can't, try to help myself because everybody in my family, this just is the way that we do. This is just the way we are. This is the way we show up. And I promise you, you say the lies so much that it becomes your identity. We will do a thing, say a thing until we become a thing. Put out a scripture, John chapter 8, verse 32. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. I chose that verse because I want you to notice something. Jesus didn't say, you shall become aware. He said, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Truth comes before freedom, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. It wasn't until I sat in my life because I was aware that things were off. I was aware that I was unhappy for years. I was aware that I felt incomplete. I was aware that I was constantly striving for more, doing more, trying to make everybody like me, but staying away from people because you don't want to be in front of a person and they don't like you or they judge you for some reason. So it's just safer to stay at home. And of course, I stay at home because home is my safe place. It's a place where I can go and close myself off from the world. But even home sometimes is not safe. And I had to learn that truth because when the world was closing in, when life was closing in, I retreated to what I thought was my safe place. I confined myself into one room within that home because home wasn't safe anymore. I could no longer find peace because even my home environment had changed. I was now a caregiver, or should I say a co-caregiver with my husband. And I had the energy of my mother-in-law who was in my home, and I couldn't escape that energy. It was time when I just wanted the house to be empty so I could be alone in my thoughts in my safe place. But I couldn't be alone. The energy was palpable. Everything in my home environment had even changed. And so everything that I thought would help me was closing in on me. And so I confined myself now to then a room in said home, and I tried to make that my safe place. And I called it the pink room. And so in that room, I could escape and no one bothered me. but everything was being reduced and the problems were only amplifying. And my capacity to suppress the emotions had reached capacity. And I knew I would look into the mirror and I started having this swelling I could see in my face because I wasn't conscientious of my body, but that was getting bigger too. Everything was getting bigger. Everything was off. Clothes wouldn't fit. Put on a pair of pants that I had been wearing a month ago and they were too tight. And I didn't understand, why are the pants too tight? Why am I gaining weight if I eat one time a day? It was what I was eating, but even more importantly, what I was drinking. I wasn't drinking water. It would be me, my beers, and my cigarettes. And I was starting to have this puffiness that was happening in my face. My eyes were watering. I could feel the the puffiness under my chin. And I would sometimes look in the mirror and you're trying to put on makeup and you're trying to sculpt and do all the things. And even with the makeup, it wasn't helping. And so I was like, I need to figure out how to do facial massages because for whatever reason, I'm having this puffiness in my face. And so I'm learning TikTok massage techniques, going up on the neck and down on the sides and up the cheeks. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Anybody who's done this know what I'm talking about. I was literally buying tools and massage oils because the obvious swelling was in my face. And I kept eye drops because my eyes had started to show dimness, discoloration. And me using the eye drops was helping to mask the truth. Now, at the time, I did not ask the pertinent questions to say what was the deeper truth. I was only aware that there was something going on. Hear me. And it was so bad that it would actually mess up my eyeshadow because my eye would water, but it would kind of come over my eyelid. And I kept saying, why is my eyes just watering like this? Okay, it's the pollen. It's the season. You start trying to justify. But something inside of me was going, Ingra, I think you're toxic. You need a detox because you haven't been taking the best care of yourself. And so I went online. They're still in my cabinet today. I went online and ordered a liver detox, a kidney detox. I'm talking about $500 worth of detox herbs because I knew that I was toxic. But the truth was, I was responsible for the toxicity that was in my system. I didn't want to point to the fact that you are contributing because I only went past the mirror in short bursts. I avoided it like the plague unconsciously because I did not like the image looking back at me. But it wasn't until I fell and I had to look up and I stood after that in front of the mirror for a really long time. And then I said, you have done this to you. You have put poisons and toxins inside of your body. You have ignored your health. You have not nourished yourself. You are responsible for this, Ingra. But why have you done this? So now we shift from awareness into truth. Why? And when I stopped, I realized that I wasn't unhappy in so many areas. I had put so much pressure on myself. But even as I started to dig deeper, because that was the stem and the leaves, but I had to dig deeper. And what I will tell you, you will be surprised when you give yourself permission to say, I am tired of showing up this way. Because when I looked in that mirror, I was like, this is not me. I don't know who this person is. I purposefully had to work on myself, and I took it one day at a time, one revelation, one thought, one moment. And the truth was not always beautiful. The truth can be hard, but I feel so free. And when I say verse came to life for me, because you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. So much truth, because I can't give it to you. It's something you have to experience for yourself. So ask yourself, where in your life have you become unaware? But stopped. Let me rephrase that. Where in your life, even as you might be thinking about this, have you become aware? Like I was aware of the swelling, but I stopped short of really asking myself the hard questions. Because we will be aware, but we won't dig deep. What things have you noticed about yourself, your life, your habits, your beliefs that you were aware of? I want you to stay with me during the week, because when I say we're building, we're building. And I talked about, in a fictitious example, I said somebody can just be like, I hate redhead people. I hate all people with red hair. And until they say why, where did I start believing that? Where did I develop this feeling? Because you have to ask the harder question. What truths have I been unwilling to face? What things have I been unwilling to see? And as you go through your week, I don't want you to just notice your behaviors. Question them. Ask yourself, what's underneath this? What stories have I believed? What fear is hiding here? Because awareness, it opens the door. But truth will give you the courage to walk through it.
Thank you for joining us on the 180 Life Coach podcast. Remember, awareness is where it begins. What you do with that awareness is your choice. And becoming is your decision, because it isn't over. It's just the beginning.